Welcome to Unit 5. First, a quick note about how everyone's doing. For the most part, people are doing really well, but for some of you, we're getting a little too comfortable, and it's because it's week 6. So I just, as a quick reminder, you need to make sure that you're reading the post so that you're not the fourth one in a row to post the same kind of idea, because not only am I looking for you to post twice in your peer responses, but your material needs to be original and interesting and thought-provoking. So make sure that you're posting something original. Additionally, citations and quizzes. So if you're allowed to use your notes in the quizzes, but if you're pulling something that is someone else's material, like something from the reading, you need to cite it, or you're plagiarizing. So make sure you do that, or you're going to get a 0 on your quiz. So there's that. And then finally, references to the reading in the reading responses. We're getting a little bit lax about, or some of you are doing a great job, but some of you are lagging on referring to the reading. And I don't just want you to refer to the reading, but really show how it's relevant, analyze it, and pull it together. And because you do have like several resources throughout the week, I'm not asking you to refer to all of them, but refer to 2 of them maybe, not just one random plopped in there quote, because that's not productive. So there's that. So for those of you who are doing a great job, keep doing what you're doing, and for those of you who need to improve a little bit, here are some tips for doing that. Okay, now on to the lecture for Unit 5. So this week we're talking about violence against women and girls, and we're specifically focusing on domestic violence and sexual violence. And this is Unit 5. So you have a lot of digital resources this week, and this lecture is meant to kind of fill in the gaps and give you a little bit background for material regarding those. As far as domestic and dating violence goes, we want to talk about who is involved, what it is, why it happens, so that you understand really what it is, because there are a lot of myths that surround violence against women. So first of all, dating violence is kind of newly recognized as something legitimate, because we think of young girls dating as not experiencing violence. So there is a recent increase in laws to protect teens who are in dating relationships where there is violence going on. Domestic violence has been recognized for longer. From the 80s is when laws began to protect women. And throughout this lecture, you're going to notice that I'm referring to the people who experience violence as women, and the people who commit the violence as men. This does not mean that the only people who experience violence are women and the only people who commit violence are men. Violence can happen in the other direction, as woman against man. It can happen in homosexual relationships as man against man, or as woman against woman. But the mass majority, according to resources like the UN and the FBI, show that statistically, partner and dating and domestic and sexual violence is found to be man against woman, and that's why we refer to perpetrator and survivor in those terms. So I don't want you to think that this is like an anti-man kind of lecture. That's not at all the goal. It's to talk about systematic violence against women. So who is experiencing this? So domestic and dating violence is qualified as violence between close, intimate partners. What is it? We typically think about it as someone being punched in the face, right? But really, it's not so simple. It's something that's systematic. It's not something that happens once. It's something that happens over and over again. And a violent partner isn't mean all the time. That would be impossible, right? That would be so hard to be mean and violent all the time, because no one is mean all the time. No one is nice all the time. It's what it is a cycle where, and it can involve any of the following things that you're seeing here. It can be psychological, where the person is called stupid or a whore or, dumb or dirty or worthless constantly, or, enough so that they really do begin to believe it and lose themselves in that. It can be economic, where the male partner has all of the control over the money, the bank accounts, the credit cards, takes account on anything that is involved economically, to the point where the person experiencing the violence has really no control over their life. Because if you imagine having no access to money in this society, that would be really, right? You would have very little control over your life if you had no access to money. It could be physical, like the way that we imagine dating violence typically, where violence is punching, hitting, kicking, those kinds of things. And oftentimes in these kinds of relationships, the physical violence is done systematically so that you can't see it. So on the stomach, on the back, on the legs, so that the person or the woman who goes out in public, it's not obvious that that person is being abused. It could be sexual, so that's where we get into issues of rape within domestic and dating violence. And it is illegal to rape your wife. It is illegal, and those laws came in the late 80s, where now rape can occur between a man and a woman in a marriage relationship if there is no consent. And we'll get into talking about what is rape in the next slide. And often stalking is also part of this situation, and that comes into when either of these relationships are attempted to be dissolved. So when the person tries to leave, stalking can become part of the violence too. And stalking is a really serious thing that we often hear joked about, right? But it can be very serious and very dangerous. So why does this happen? Well, we hear common tropes like, if I love her so much that if I can't have her, no one can have her, which makes it sound like domestic or dating violence is about love or is about passion, but it's not about love or passion. It is found to be about power and control. And that's a really important distinction to make about what is the root of domestic or dating violence, that it's about power and control and not about love. It's not about passion, even though that is really how it's framed culturally. And finally, why doesn't the woman leave? That's a really common question. And often there will be a lot of reasons why the woman won't leave, which may be connected to the violence, like she doesn't think she's good enough to leave, or she has no money to leave, or it could be connected to her situation, like maybe she has children, or she has a pet who's been threatened, which is very common, things like that. But finally, it has been found that leaving is a heightened risk, where the highest possibility for mortality or murder within a domestic or dating violence relationship is when the woman tries to leave. So that's your information regarding what this structure looks like and how it functions.